So I tried many different churches. I went to the Baptist church, to the Evangelical church, to the Anglican, to the Catholic, to the Anglo-Catholic. And I never felt at home in any of them. Becoming Orthodox was like coming home to something that just felt like it fit me properly. For me, the most important work that I've done is a cartoon story I'm working on about St Brendan. Because for me, I've loved comics and cartoons ever since I was a child. I grew up in a house where television was forbidden because I came from a very religious background, but we were allowed to look at comics. And I particularly love French and Belgian comics. So it's been a dream of mine for a long time to make a story about a particular saint, an Irish saint who lived in the 5th and 6th centuries and who went on this fantastic voyage. So I've been trying to create a comic book about him. So this is probably my favourite work. I'm a very small cog in the machine. It's not my project. I was introduced to Masha, who it's her project. Although she has many different people who have been working on it. She wanted to make an English version of her website about the life of St Elisabeth. And then I was suggesting a few making some design suggestions, and also we've been trying to access some royal archives in Windsor Castle in London, just outside of London, where they have many of the original letters that St Elizabeth wrote to Queen Victoria. So it's a very small work that I've been doing. My parents came from a very strict Protestant sect, really. They were hyper-Calvinist, which means they not only believed in predestination, they believed in something called double predestination, which means not only the saved are chosen by God to be saved, but also those who are damned are chosen by God to not ever believe. It was very, very difficult growing up with it. I think I was only 13 when I just had this sense one day when I was sitting in church that God actually existed, and well, I'd always believed that God existed, but I hadn't ever had any belief that he was interested in me. So I think that was a big revelation to me, that God actually wanted some kind of contact with me. But it was still, it wasn't possible for me to be a Christian in this church. It just wasn't possible to discover God in this church. So I tried many different churches. I went to the Baptist church, to the Evangelical church, to the Anglican, to the Catholic, to the Anglo-Catholic. And I never felt at home in any of them. So it was only when I think I was already engaged to somebody from St Petersburg, and I visited St Petersburg, and she took me to an Orthodox church, and I think within maybe a minute or 2 minutes I understood that it was where I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And when I was working in St Petersburg, I worked with a very devout Orthodox girl who was a designer, and she used to talk about her spiritual father, which, you know, for me was a completely new concept. And then one day she said, "Oh, we will go and visit our spiritual father. Would you like to come?" So I went with a few other people, and I think it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life, because it was in the middle of the winter. We walked across the frozen lake for hours and hours to this beautiful little island, and we met this starets who lived there, for Father Nikolai Guryanov, and spoke with him. And I think this was probably the moment I understood I needed to be baptized as an Orthodox. I think in some ways the changes were quite subtle. I think when becoming Orthodox for me, was not my conversion. My conversion to Christianity was when I was very young. Becoming Orthodox was like coming home to something that just felt like it fit me properly. I studied painting at university, fine art, so I was painting pictures myself, and it always felt very natural for me to try to seek God through art. And this was something I was always trying to do, through my own painting, through looking at other people's art, reading literature, listening to music. And I think in the Protestant church it's not something that people really do. In the Protestant church, people try to understand God with their brains, with their intellect. I don't really think it's possible to understand God through the intellect. Well, she's a teenager. She's 15, and she needs to rebel a little bit. So I think now it's difficult to get her into church. But I sense there is a belief there, and with both my daughters. My oldest daughter is not interested in church at all. I'd say she's quite antagonistic towards quite a lot of Christian ideas, because they conflict with what she's being taught at university, and she's studying sociology. And also for my younger daughter, it's very difficult with the school programs in England. What they're teaching, you know, about gender, for example, at the moment. This is the, you know, and sexuality. It's very much opposed to Christianity. And it's very, very difficult for children children want to fit in, and they want the respect of the people they're around. So I think it's difficult for her. She belongs to a very ancient church from a different culture, and I sense there's a belief and a respect for the church in both my daughters, but it's kind of in the background at the moment. But hopefully it will reappear when they're a bit older. There's different styles of bringing up children. If they can't find something that they feel natural with, then I don't think they can be natural Christians, really. I wouldn't want them to be forced into some straitjacket of a certain way of expressing their faith. They need to discover it themselves. But hopefully the seed has been planted, by the upbringing that they've had. Sometimes I think I should have been stricter, but too late now. It's the cathedral where Metropolitan Anthony was. So when we first arrived back from St Petersburg to London, he was still there for several years. So, you know, I used to hear him preach every Sunday, and that was very special. To me, it was just the place was special to me. And to be honest, I also felt and still feel that English people need some humility, because we don't know how to be Orthodox, really, and we do need, whether it's Russians, Greeks, Romanians, doesn't matter, but we need somebody else to actually show us how to be Orthodox. And for me, the parishes in England which are very English, I don't feel very at home there. It doesn't feel, to me, it doesn't feel right. I mean, I think for me, I discovered Orthodoxy through Russia, so it's very much tied up with Russian culture and the Russian soul. It's a very different mentality to what, you know, you can find in England. Influences my work in many ways. Some of them are quite subtle ways. For example, I'm not particularly motivated by money. I'm more motivated by creating beautiful things, and particularly beautiful things that are somehow linked to my faith. I was visiting the monastery and I got to know somebody, and suddenly there were lots of projects, lots of books that needed designing, and I'd been designing a lot of books about art. So it just seemed very natural to do it. Well, Steve was telling me about this place for a long time, for many years, and he was saying, "Oh, you have to come, you have to come." And I always said, yeah, I'll come, but not quite yet. Well, mainly because of the children, because it's just me who looks after the children. So it wasn't possible. And then in October, my oldest daughter is studying in Mexico. My youngest daughter went to St Petersburg to stay with her grandparents, so I was free, and Steve was very persuasive, so I bought a ticket. I think that the thing that, on my first visit, the thing that impressed me the most was visiting Mother Vera with her horses in this podvorya. It seems that God is very present there, but not in conventional ways, not in religious ways, but in just the way, for example, Mother Vera is with these horses. It seems that she has this very special contact with them that somehow comes through her faith. The people who live in Podvorya, obviously they have very harsh backgrounds, but you can sense that they're at peace and that they've found something quite special. I think peace, first of all, ability to be at peace with our fellow Christians, and purpose, I think.